Hear where you're joining us from and your name. So please add it into the chat when you have some time to do so. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen with you. And I apologize, it's dark and it's raining and it's storming here in Edmonton. So if you hear the background of thunder and and I lose power or anything, that is why it's so dark here today. So welcome to Indigenous Approach to Strategic Planning. Before we start, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. As Elsie shared, I am joining you from Treaty 6 today. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on Indigenous land in Treaty 6 territory, land occupied, traveled, and cared for by Indigenous people since time immemorial to the present day. This place, Amiskwachi Waskayagan, again, I'm going to say it again, Amiskwachi Waskayagan, is Cree for Beaver Hills House, which is Edmonton. And it's on the traditional lands, meeting grounds, gathering places, and traveling routes of the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot, the Dene, the Nakota Sioux, and the Métis, whose histories and languages and cultures continue to enrich our shared heritage. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with land acknowledgements, or not too sure why we do them, it's actually not a call to action that's within the TRC's 94 calls to action. It's an unofficial call to action. And it's the reason why we do it is because as Indigenous people, we have done this since time immemorial. Since time immemorial, we've honored being on each other's lands and meeting on our traditional land. So that is often why you'll see us starting with a land acknowledgement. And I'm not about the thinking that land acknowledgements are just token pieces of calls to action. I actually think that they can be more than just words said at the beginning of the event, and that they could start to real reconciliation when people understand where they come from. And I think that understanding also comes from understanding time immemorial and what it means to us as Indigenous people. When we say that, we really believe that we've been a part of this land since the beginning of time. You know, science has us coming across the Bering Strait. And recently I was meeting with a chief, and the way he puts it, he says, science has us coming across the Bering Strait on skidoos. And really, we don't believe that happened as Indigenous people. We believe that we've been a part of this land since time immemorial, since creation. And our creation stories have us here, a part of Turtle Island since the beginning. And in fact, there was an arrowhead that was found in Lower BC just last year that was 11,000 years old. And what that says is that, and the arrowhead that was found was actually made of stone that was from another part of Canada. So not only have we been here for at least 11,000 years, we've been trading with each other and developing relationships and had economic development together for over 11,000 years. Now, to put that into perspective of ancient civilizations that are honored across the globe, the pyramids were built between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago, and Cleopatra was about 3,500 years ago. So when Indigenous people say we've been here since time immemorial, we've been here since time immemorial, and this is our land. And that's why land acknowledgement to me is so important. Thank you for joining from all over, not only Alberta, BC, and even Fort Smith, NWT, yay, Dene land. My First Nation is actually Salt River. To give you a bit about myself, my name is Tanya Tourangeau. I'm Dene First Nation from the Northwest Territories. I'm a daughter, I'm a granddaughter, I'm a great-granddaughter. I'm a niece, a cousin of residential school survivors in my family. But I'm also a cycle breaker and a bridge builder. And I'm really proud of those two titles as well. Some of you, I see who joined me personally in the room and know me that I became pregnant when I was 14 years old and became a proud mom at 15. And I decided that the cycles stop with me, that through those intergenerational traumas at residential schools and assimilation policies, it affected my family so much that I'd gotten to the point where I became a mom at 15 years old. And I use the picture of my sons there in their regalia. It's actually a cheat because they're quite a bit older now, but I use it as a reminder of the reason why I do what I do is because I wanted things to be different for my son, my first son, and then my second son who was born. You see me at that top picture there with my oldest son at my grade 12 graduation. I had spent more money on his white suit when I graduated because it was so important to me that he see the difference that I was making for him. And the pictures of my boys in the regalia further inspires me that that was the first day that they started dancing in their powwow. And that regalia is, represents the hours and the time, the love, the spirit of our feeling and our culture that all came together that day, and what continues moving me forward and sharing the knowledge that I have. I've spent a year building capacity for Indigenous people, for my people. I spent 10 years being an adult educator for various college institutions. I've taught Aboriginal entrepreneurship and business administration programs. All in all, I say that I've been involved in over 500 business plans developed by Indigenous entrepreneurs across Canada. I've also worked with the government of the Northwest Territories and corporate HR. I had the pleasure of working with Can Do in partnership with FCM for their SETI program. I've worked with the Native Women's Association of Canada, Mentor Canada, and most recently with my consulting business, Tanya T Consulting. I've helped with reconciliation strategies and initiatives with companies as large as Starbucks, Dene. Dene is a film company that you might be familiar. They won an Oscar for Dune this year, and as well as with Dia Foods. I pride myself in being a bridge builder to really assist non-Indigenous government organizations, people, in coming together with Indigenous people and building a better Canada for all of us. So today's session, Indigenous Approach to Strategic Planning, is really what I put together as my approach to strategic planning within my consulting company. And with today's session, you'll learn how traditional values and knowledge are really a fundamental part, fundamental components to strategic planning. And I hope that by this session, you'll be inspired about how you can incorporate them within your strategic planning in your organization. Our session will start off with identifying potentially what Indigenous knowledge and values are related to planning, and then giving some baseline information. What is a strategic plan? What are the components of it? Why it's important? The benefits of strategic planning? And then going into maybe the TRC calls to action, and also our Indigenous views and how we can incorporate them within not only the planning process, but the plan itself. And then reviewing the steps, the processes to strategic planning. So what I found over the course of my career is that oftentimes in Indigenous workplaces, like in band offices, friendship centers, and maybe nonprofits, that traditional values and knowledge are present with little effort, that there's always humor in the workplace. The work culture is more relaxed and less colonial and less rigid and cooled. That it's encouraged that we build relationships within our workplaces, that we can embrace our traditional ways of knowing, and we could practice and be authentic who we are in our Indigenous workplaces. And I think that it's about time that we not only embrace the way that we as Indigenous people work and live within our own community spaces, but we share that broadly, with non-Indigenous workplaces and within our strategic planning, even with non-Indigenous workplaces. I'll demonstrate today through my work with a large company exactly how I've encourage them to walk the way I'm walking and start looking at strategic planning through an Indigenous view. Many strong workplaces, incorporate relationships, community, natural laws, or sacred teachings within the workplace. And some at different levels. Really strong, effective workplaces, Indigenous workplaces, embrace all of these within their workplace, that there's time committed to relationship building internally and externally, that they're having lunches together, that they're having desserts at 2:00. I know that it can do that. It's oftentimes having a pie day together, making those times to know each other and build authentic relationships. And with that comes a sense of community, that when everyone feels involved in their sense of purpose, that it naturally, everybody wants to be a part of it, that it's not just this workplace that you go in and out of every day. And with Indigenous communities, we have a strong connection to our natural laws, believing that everything has a purpose, everything has a spirit, and that everything fits within, our circle of living, and living that every day so that we respect that what we're doing is meaningful, and it actually goes towards, that thinking of the next 7 generations. The decisions that we make today, how are they affecting our youth of tomorrow? How are we being accountable and responsible? And often that ties right in with our sacred teachings. And our sacred teachings, they're similar, but they're also different right across Turtle Island. Some have 7 sacred teachings. Some have the 14 teepee poles. Within my culture, we have Dene laws. So it's also understanding what's local to where you are, what's important to the local Indigenous people there. What have they followed since time immemorial? And bringing that back into the workplace and back into strategic planning. Because when we incorporate our traditional values and knowledge, and we're authentic with who we are, then we're really embracing that work-life balance. Because nobody wants to be someone different than who they are at work than they are at home. And the more that we can align that together, the better that not only we're going to be happy, healthier, and less stressful, but we're going to be more productive in what we find passion in doing in our work life. So having some baseline knowledge then about strategic planning before we can understand how we could totally incorporate that, our traditional knowledge and values within it. It's first understanding what is a strategic plan. Now, a solid strategic plan can give your organization, your business, clarity and focus that it needs for like the next 1 to 2, 3 years. It's a tool or a document where you're going to define where your organization wants to go. And always it's going to be aligned to your vision, your mission, and your values at the beginning. And I also like, if I was to say, it also has to be aligned to your culture. The strategic plan will list your prioritized goals to be achieved within that time frame, and it will identify actions that will be taken to achieve those prioritized goals. So just looking through the list, going over, basic components of your strategic plan. Your vision is your future state, what you choose to be. And your vision is going to ultimately be the outcome of the mission statement. Now, if we're talking about specifically about a business, you've probably already outlined your vision and mission statement. But understanding how it fits within your strategic plan is important, because at the end of the day, all of them need to be aligned to ensure that when your business has purpose, your organization has purpose, but also that your employees, your stakeholders, the community understand what's important to your business. So with that, your mission statement or your mission should be why you exist, the core of purpose of your organization. And the values are your culture, your beliefs, your standards within your organization. And I encourage you to always review your vision, mission, and values. Ensure that they're still aligned to what you're doing within your organization. That's probably an important first step before you're going to sit down and do your strategic plan. And within your strategic plan, you're going to identify what goals, what outcomes are going to be really important to you to achieve within these 1 to 3 years. Because you're not going to accomplish all of your vision in 1 to 3 years. But what are you doing within that mission to get towards that? What are you prioritizing within the next 1 to 3 years? What are your targets within there? And from there, from those goals, once they're identified, those outcomes, you can plan out strategies, many strategies within your strategic plan of how you're going to achieve the goals, basically. And then within those goals, you'll have different initiatives, different areas of focus of what is needed to support the strategies. And then you'll be identifying your projects and your work plans and getting down to the nitty-gritty about, budget, timeline, and who's responsible for these work plans within your organization. So do you need a strategic plan? Absolutely. Every business should have a strategic plan. Every organization should have a strategic plan. And it's not just something that you're going to create once every 3 years and never look at it again. It's something that should always be referred to throughout those 3 years to ensure that you're staying on track, but also to ensure that your strategic plan is also serving you well. Now, a strategic plan is one of many tools that you can use to plan and hit your goals within your organization. A strategic plan pulls in inspiration from, again, your vision and your mission statements, and it outlines those actions that you're going to take to move forward towards that right direction. It's more of a forward thinking than your company goals would be. And it should cover more than 1 year of work, which your company objectives normally could be set yearly or quarterly within your organization. You can think of your strategic plan as a way that your company's objectives will move the needle towards your overall strategy. But it also should span, again, multiple years, because your strategic plan is company-wide and it needs to accomplish all the objectives that you want to achieve that ultimately you see within your vision. So understanding these different plans that you have within your organization is important to see how your strategic plan all ties together. Now, there's many benefits to having your strategic plan. Strategic planning, is ultimately the process in which your vision is defined for the future, identifying your organization's goals and objectives, and that understanding that not only they're important to have that alignment, but they're super beneficial for everyone. Because your business needs direction. And those organizational goals are going to give everyone within your business the clear direction that they're needed, that roadmap that they need to go forward, and also to help everyone stay on track. Especially, if there's turnover within your organization. It's really fantastic when, a new employee or maybe a new initiative joins your organization or starts within your organization, to understand, beyond the vision, mission, and the values of the organization, but what is being worked on right now. A key tip I always give new employees is study that strategic plan. Understand where the organization is within that strategic plan and how they're moving towards achieving that. Talk to each other in the different departments and the different initiatives and collaborate together with that understanding, because ultimately that's going to give you that shared purpose. And it's so important to have that shared purpose, because without it, everyone's going in different directions and not really sure if they're actually succeeding in what the organization is intending within those 3 years. And when everyone has a shared purpose, it overall increases the motivation and the engagement of not only the employees, but also the stakeholders, the members, the community. I think it's so it's so I can't even think of the word right now. It's so limiting when organizations spend big money on putting together a strategic plan, but they never share it more than, oh, it's created and here it is, but they never go back and review it or monitor it or celebrate the milestones hit within that strategic plan. Now, how I add my Indigenous flair, my Dene flair to the strategic planning process is incorporating what I call the 4 C's in the process. Bringing in that culture, or even using the C for ceremony, bringing in intentional connections with the planning process, opportunity for collaboration, and lots of communication. These 4 C's need to be embedded within the process and in the final product. Now, culture can be your local culture, ensuring that you're not taking pan-Indigenous knowledge from Canada across Canada, but really paying attention to where your organization is, that land acknowledgement, what kind of cultural practices there are, and bringing that into the process. It can include something like prayer at the beginning of the planning process and within certain milestones within the planning stages. It could also involve incorporating guidance from an elder, a knowledge keeper, or even youth within the community. It's amazing how bringing in youth can really inspire more ideas within the strategic plan and the organization. Having food together is so important with Indigenous people. So taking time to eat together, many times, going out and meeting on the land, not necessarily doing a land-based activity, but, having a conversation outside, sharing connection outside, learning culture outside. And with the second of the 4 C's, connection, is really including everyone within the strategic plan. Oftentimes, strategic plans are, put together by high-level leaders or a consultant apart from the organization with very little input from employees or stakeholders. So it's really important within the planning process to connect with everyone in the organization. Maybe even having group meetings, creating a social media channel, something like Slack, where people are aware that they can get together and know what's going on with this strategic planning process. And it also gives opportunity to build relationships of trust. Because it is your employees, your stakeholders, the community who's going to be implementing and embracing your strategic plan in the end. So having those strong relationships built of trust in the process will really ensure that your strategic plan is implemented successfully. And the 3rd C is collaboration, because again, you can't do this in silo. You have to involve everyone within the corporation, leveraging everyone's knowledge and expertise, because the employees know best what goals are needed to be aligned to the priorities and what initiatives may work within their departments, within their areas, within their groups to achieve them. So it's really important that you get together and, have that connection, that relationship building going on. So also that people feel safe to share their ideas together, and having that ongoing communication to further build that connection, that collaboration, ensuring that everyone knows where you are in the process of the strategic plan and to know what to expect next. And truly, all these 4 C's end up blending together. That when you include culture, it's going to bring opportunities to connect. It's going to bring opportunities to communicate, to collaborate. And oftentimes you'll see that those lines will blur and they just become really circular and natural when you start embracing these within your strategic planning process. And when you do so, everyone is going to understand their roles more within not only this planning process, but how they're going to move, those goals forward, working towards your vision, your mission, understanding the values of your organization. And when you create that great team together, that's when you have true work-life balance, because your employees are going to be happier, they're going to be less stressed, they're going to have that sense of purpose. And that's just naturally going to also flow through their home life, because they're going to go home happier, less stressed. And you're going to create this wonderful momentum of working towards that, together in synergy. Now, here is a slide I'm sharing with you about a plan that I recently put together for developing a large strategy. This is for a large group of companies. They have thousands and thousands of employees. Their company is worth $54 billion in assets. And so when they asked me to put together a reconciliation strategic plan for them, it was really important to take the time for me to encourage them to embrace the 4 C's within this process. And I'll tell you, when we first sat down together, they really only wanted to fund the last part of phase 3, which is strategy development. And I had to go back and educate them why it's important to incorporate those 4 C's. Because doing a reconciliation strategy or any large strategic plan for a big business of the size really needs that attention to connection, communication, collaboration, and culture. Because without it, we can have the best strategy, but we also need everyone involved to embrace that strategy, implement that strategy, and celebrate that strategy. So if you look at phase 1, I wanted to incorporate education throughout all phases of the development of the strategy. And although I'm not using specifically the 4 C's within the pillars of the strategy high-level work plan, all 4 C's are represented within each pillar. So within the education pillar, the reason for this is to ensure that all the employees who are going to be affected by the strategic plan have the baseline knowledge of culture. So right now we're putting together a plan to have knowledge sharing sessions, truth and reconciliation knowledge sharing sessions for all the thousands of employees. Planning it throughout all of this process from July to March, because there's so many employees, but also because we want to group them together in a way that makes sense. So grouping together like departments and regions together. So they bond in that learning process, learning about truth and reconciliation, understanding the history of Indigenous people in Canada. And also understanding call number 92, business reconciliation. But also embracing that culture within there by including regional events to attend. So giving them a list of powwows to attend in their area, supporting them with powwow 101 tips to go and attend this. So they're really understanding culture from a baseline together and growing together with the intention that by the time they get to the reconciliation strategy, that they'll have more buy-in and they'll feel more responsible and accountable to the change that this strategy will bring. And you'll see the second pillar within the development is the Indigenous Knowledge Systems Influence Change Management. And this is for internal and external. And as you see, I have proposed that this occurs between all phases as well as the strategy development. Again, incorporating the 4 C's within this pillar as well. And this is really important because a lot of times the strategy development, they only implement their change management plans once the strategy is developed. And for me, it's really important that you bring change management in right from the beginning, because you need that buy-in. You want people not only to understand that they're changing, but to have a desire to change. And it's really difficult, especially with a really large company, to have that at the end product. And that's why so many strategies fails, because they don't embrace change management effectively. And we actually sat down with many change management specialists at the company who reviewed it, and they gave glowing reviews for approaching it this way. And for me, although I knew it was right as an Indigenous person, it was very validating to have people who've been in this field and certified for several decades say, this is perfect, and I support you going forward with this proposal to the next level. And with that, within the next pillar, collaborative strategy inception, being internal within all three phases, is giving that opportunity for that connection, that collaboration, that communication. Because I really feel strongly that everyone from the admin to the C-suite employees need to be involved in all strategic plans. Because if they aren't, they're not going to be as successful. You want to create a sense of community, no matter what strategic plan you're putting together. And so that gives you an idea of how I propose and incorporate the 4 C's within my consulting business. And then with my phase 2 and 3 is your regular, non-Indigenous strategic planning processes of research recommendations, and compiling everything together to get that strong strategy that will be implemented enterprise-wide. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about my IKS Change Management. I will share that I will be having a follow-up webinar, a follow-up can-do webinar in September, focusing on change management. But I like to call it my IKS influenced, Indigenous Knowledge Systems Influenced Change Management, because for me, it's starting with that culture. Everywhere possible is embracing culture. I think that, for too long that, we've left our culture at the door when we enter our workplace. And times are changing now. It's really important that, we be our authentic selves and bring culture with us everywhere we go. And so with that, I've incorporated it within my change management processes as well. This is adapting the ADKAR change management training that some of you may be familiar with. And what ADKAR is basically going through the processes to increase end user adoption or end user buy-in. And typical ones start with awareness. And I'm like, no, we're going to start with culture. And really, if wanted to be honest, it would be C in front of every one of these letters, because culture has to come with awareness, desire, knowledgeability, and reinforcement. Always incorporating that culture everywhere that you can. So starting with awareness, helping your employees understand why that strategy is being developed and how it's being developed. And with that, building that desire, the change that's going to come, what's going to improve with this strategy? What are those outcomes that everyone's hoping to achieve within? What are those goals, those initiatives, those work plans that are coming out that, is eventually going to be a part of everyone's work description? And the knowledge part is actually the strategy, right? You can't have the knowledge until you have that paper within there that guides them, that approves a strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, we'll have that ability and that reinforcement. So, having the monitoring of the plan, going in and checking in where everyone is at. Are you meeting your milestones? Are you hitting your key performance indicators? And adjusting as well. Understanding that strategic plan doesn't have to be static, that it can be fluid and adjusted based on, things change within your organization. So again, you can join me in September to learn more about my IKS Change Management. Moving along within the strategic planning process, I think it's really important, no matter what strategic plan that you're working on, that you include something about from the 92, the call to action number 92, business and reconciliation. Now, for those of you who are not too familiar with truth and reconciliation calls, the 94 calls came out in 2015. And they aren't meant to be done all by one person or one organization. The 94 calls are split up to apply to municipalities, provincial government, federal government, post-secondary institutions. And the one call to action that applies to business is number 92. And I think that not only can we have a reconciliation strategy within the organization, but also understanding how strategic plans can themselves incorporate even components, not all factors of the call within the strategic plan, but components with it, ensuring that, you know, we're all working together to building a better tomorrow for all of us. So number 92, it's a quite in-depth call if you're not familiar with it. It starts with adopting the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as your reconciliation framework. And then it moves on to include building, of course, respectful relationships with your local Indigenous communities, providing access to jobs, training, and education, and also opportunities and benefits from economic development projects, and increasing education of Indigenous peoples for your management and staff. Now, not all of those may apply to your organization, but finding out which ones do and prioritizing potentially what can be worked on with in your organization with 1 to 3 years within your strategic plan. You know, are you going to increase education for your employees about Indigenous peoples? Intentionally, how are you strategically planning that? Are you going to ensure that, you know, employees at least make up 5 to 7% of the organization? Now, how is that going to be planned out? How are you building respectful relationships with local Indigenous people in your area? So there is no template of how to do this. I think that we're all learning from each other at this point. And, you know, there's different organizations testing the waters in different ways right now. And, you know, there's great, you know, things being done right now in Can-Do with a SETI program, and those great relationships between First Nations and municipalities. And so research what's out there, take some time to learn how others are doing it, and see what can be prioritized within your organization. And not only with the call number 92, but I also like to say, like, let's also take opportunity to incorporate our traditional ways of knowing and being within our strategic plans. And again, not everything has to be included, that you can pick what's important to you. As I was thinking about incorporating sacred teachings, it could be that, you know, maybe your strategic plan is going to incorporate 3 of the 7 sacred teachings within this plan, and, you know, 3 the next plan, or maybe you're going to cycle all 7 teachings within various parts of your objectives and your goals of your strategic plan. You know, or maybe you're taking a specific Dene law. You know, you're going to customize it how it best fits you. But again, not leaving it at the door of your workplace, you know, embracing it as many ways as you can, because that's really what brings us together as Indigenous people. And I think that we can grow that within our non-Indigenous organizations as well, and within our practices within these non-Indigenous organizations. So if you're not familiar with these teachings, you know, I encourage you to take the time to learn some of these teachings, you know, whether you're researching online or you're talking to a knowledge keeper or an elder, and finding out what's local and important within your community. and asking the community members, how could this be best represented within our strategic plans? Now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the process of potentially how you can embrace this, and then I'll leave some time for some questions, some comments, and some dialogue. So I think it's really important that you start with developing the plan to plan. I showed you the slide with my high-level work plan. You know, that took a lot of time of getting together with the organization to ensure that, you know, the 4 C's are incorporated within that plan to plan. Because if you're not intentional with those 4 C's, they're not going to happen, and nobody's going to make time for it. By ensuring that you're planning for those 4 C's, you're planning for success. You're planning for a more wholesome, not only planning process, but your actual strategic plan that will end up at the end will be more robust. It'll be more representative of everyone who's involved within your organization, and everyone will have a sense of purpose of what you're achieving within that strategic plan. And my pillars that I've used, and again, you can change these titles, you know, how best suits you. My pillars right now is having that education, incorporating IKS Change Management, having collaboration, really all those 3 within all phases of development, and then getting into your normal, you know, Western strategic development. Now, I showed you that, you know, huge high-level plan because I think it's easier to scale down than it is to scale up. You know, your plan, you know, may take only 3 months to put together. Maybe you have 60 days to develop a strategic plan. You know, no matter how much time that you have, ensuring that there's time for those 4 C's within there. And then once you have the plan is really the discovery phase, you know, that phase of collaboratively putting together the plan with everybody in the company, you know, giving opportunity to have one-on-ones with key people, having those group meetings, maybe doing a survey. And when you're having those 4 C's, that connection, the culture, the community, people are going to naturally build the relationship where they're going to trust you more and share with you what they want to see within that strategic plan, you know, what their hopes are, what they think they can accomplish within their organization. Because then also they're going to have confidence within their voice and being authentic in that. And then you're going to move into your strategy development. You're going to take everything that you learned, you know, from implementing your plan to plan, your discovery phase, you know, the 4 C's, all the communication, all the connection that you have within it, and compile all that into recommendations and that would be priorities that are aligned, you know, to the organization's mission, vision, values, and hopefully components of call number 92, business and reconciliation, and or traditional knowledge as well. You know, ensuring that we're doing business in a good way as Indigenous people as much as possible, that we're taking that time intentionally to say that we're being responsible with our business development, with what we put out there in Turtle Island, and that it should always authentically represent who we are, what we value as people. And with that, I just want to say, Masicho, thank you so much for listening to me this afternoon. And I encourage you, if you haven't checked out my website is tanyat.co. And just give us some time now to share your thoughts, your feedback, if you have any questions. If anything inspired you from my sharing today, you feel free to unmute yourself or put your hand up or share some of your examples of strategic planning in Indian country. I'd really like to hear more from you. Everyone is happy? Everyone's silent? That's a good silence. Nobody left already. Everyone's still in the room, so that's a good sign. No, that's great. Oh, yeah, please go ahead. Someone unmuted themselves.
Hi.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Hi.
When you're speaking there, you're talking about that very large organization with thousands of. It made me reminded me of our comprehensive community plan that we did here in our community for Peguis. It encompassed all the departments, all the grassroots people, the schools, everything. And it was healing based. We used 4 words from Alberta that came in and helped with that, coordinated with us. And when you talk about trusting each other, and that with the culture and with the planning that we did in our community, there was a lot of people got close. They got close and they learned a lot about each other that they didn't know. They didn't know, oh, gee, this guy can paint really nice or draw really good. And so then when we have to do things, then we know, hey, we can call on him, you know, to come in and draw this for our whatever we're going to use it for. But that's a really big part with the strategic planning is that trust. It makes a big difference. Like community members used to see directors of our departments as untouchable, or, you know, like they're kind of, oh, I don't know about this guy, right? But all of a sudden they saw them in a different light. They saw them as themselves, you know? And so it really built community unity and closeness, and that everybody has a place to you know, to apply their talents. And it doesn't matter if you're a director or you're something else, you know, we all have a job to do, and that unity and that closeness and that trust, I think that's really key, you know, and you express that a lot. I just wanted to share that little bit.
No, that's excellent. Thank you, Debbie. And I think Peguis First Nation really demonstrates that great togetherness, and just you see that with the programs that you have, the events that you put on, the treaty days. I think they're the most amazing treaty days in all of Turtle Island. And thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important that the feeling of equalness, where there's no hierarchy when you involve culture, you know, that we all feel the same. And exactly, if you could build that unity together so that you can call on each other when you're implementing your work plan, you know, are you having those difficult times, you've built that communication and that trust so you can have those difficult conversations should you need to.
Yeah, and you talked about being authentic, you know, like you can just be who, you know, that's what I find with our people on, like, the norm for our people is that what you see is what you get. You know, I've been in different parts of Canada and in, you know, in Europe also, and that's what they noticed about me as an Indigenous person, is that what you see is what you get. There's no airs, you know, like this, we're the same all the time, and that's one of the traits that we have as Indigenous people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so it's good to bring that out in everybody more. Yeah.
To feel more confidence in that, because we feel more balanced when we're confident in who we are as people. Again, we don't have to leave ourselves at the door and, you know, put on a non-Indigenous face just because we're going to work in a non-Indigenous company. We can be ourselves 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And that's our culture. That's who we are. You know, we carry it in our hearts.
Yes,
wherever
exactly.
we go. I had one question.
Yes.
Where are you from in the Northwest Territories?
My First Nation is Salt River First Nation, and the hamlet next to it is called Fort Smith. So it's not that deep. I could walk to Alberta from the middle of my First Nation, and we make a joke that, oh yeah, we're going to Alberta for the day, and people who don't know, it's like, oh, have a good vacation, you know, and we're back within an hour. So
we used to. I grew up in Point. And
Oh,
yes, and we used to go to Fort Smith and play sports, and you guys are tough over there.
yeah, yeah.
The boys used to always hang close to us because they get beat up. Must be all that buffalo meat over there.
Yeah, strong Dene's over there, that's for sure. Oh, thanks so much for sharing, Debbie. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Anyone else have any? Oh, yes, Holly, you got your hand up.
Yes, I do. Hi, Tanya. I'm a huge fan and so excited that I came across this, the opportunity to attend this here because it was really great. And I think one of the main things that I really took away, I love your take on the 4 C's because that's just like, the 4 C's of anything, and even like the 4 C's of credit, for example, and like all of it. So that was really amazing. So thank you. And the other piece is just what you had mentioned about, like, we want to show up to work the same way we show up anywhere else, and it really resonated with me, and I've really tried for a long time to ensure that I was doing that. I think I'll just share something really quickly about that. Is one time I realized I had 2 different handshakes, one for like Muniao businessmen, and then one for when I was in community. And one day I just said, why am I doing this? Like, I just need, I'm not being authentic to who I am and myself. And I'm not bending to meet anyone who's non-Indigenous. They have to bend to meet me. So I'm going to have my handshake the way that I shake hands in my community. And that's the way that it's going to be. So in any case, the reason that I put my hand up is because something that I've been thinking about for a while. We have a really great program at Futurepreneur Canada servicing young Indigenous entrepreneurs throughout the nation. And we have some great opportunities that come up, some really great to fill some really great positions. But I think across Indigenous Canada right now, I've heard at Canada Council for Aboriginal Business and through NACA and through other things that there's a shortage on Indigenous talent right now. And I guess as such, we're only 4% of the population, right? So that's always to be expected. But the other thing is, I see a lot of this, toward really fueling for reconciliation, a lot of non-Indigenous companies wanting to hire Indigenous talent and trying to figure out and putting together Indigenous programming. But I think, how does this fit into strategic planning when you can onboard, you can hire, you can recruit, but can you retain Indigenous talent? And how do you foresee that could fit into strategic planning for a non-Indigenous organization?
You're exactly right about one, attracting great Indigenous talent and then retaining them. I think it just comes back to the 4 C's. I think that right now, people like me, and there's many of us out there right now, including yourself, that wants to work where they're respected, and more so than that plaque on the wall that says, like, this is 100th great place to work, or or the top 500 place to work, which at the end of the day doesn't really mean anything. That us as Indigenous people, we want a place where we can have relationships at work, that we may not be best friends and we may not go on vacation together, but those 7.5 or 8 hours a day that we spend together, that they're meaningful, that I can trust you, that there's this, again, this sense of purpose together. And when you feel that organizations don't have that, you'll never last long in there, because it goes against our Indigenous worldviews, our way of being, our traditional way of knowing, and just how we relate to each other and building a community together. So I think that, a lot of times right now, EDI specialists, equity, diversity, inclusion, sometimes are different. However, IDI, or, they mix them up, that they're really trying to understand that more so right now. And I'm also trying to bringing it more into my work as well, that the reconciliation strategy, internal and external, is more than just call number 92, but it's how you build your workplace culture. you know, and they benefit too. Non-Indigenous organizations benefit because when you have better teams, stronger teams, they're going to be more productive. They're going to see that, you know, great synergy that comes, what we say, a dream team, you know, when a dream team comes together, oh my God, you know, you get goosebumps because how effective they are together, because communication is there, relationship is there, conflict resolution is there, and you feel worthy, more so than an employee, but that you're contributing to that sense of purpose. And that more organizations can embrace that, then they'll keep great talent, and they won't lose us so quickly. Because so many times I get you know, calls to sit down, and there's some organizations right away I can tell by the Zoom call that they have lack of culture, and I'm like, sorry, I'm too busy right now, thank you very much, you know, because I don't have time to devote to people who just want to check the box for reconciliation, or check the box, I need an Indigenous employee. I want someone who wants a relationship with me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Any last comments before we run out of time, anyone? Okay. Well, thank you so much to Can Do. I really appreciate the support and allowing me to share my knowledge. I thank you for some of the comments today. I want to say that definitely, you know, I'd love to give more examples if you want to join for the ADCAR presentation in September. And Ken, I love your feedback as well. And I'm going to follow up with Elsie and Daniel. And who knows, maybe you'll see more best practices with incorporating the 4 C's. And I'll hand it back to Elsie Masicho.
Great, thank you so much, Tanya. And thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'll be sending out an evaluation shortly. Tanya's next session with us is September 7th, so keep an eye on our website and hope to see you there. Thank you, and hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.